Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. The 2021-2022 season commenced with the Community Shield as FA Cup champions Leicester took on Premier League champions Manchester City. Both Rodgers and Pep are coming off great 2021 seasons and were looking to start this one strong and potentially experiment with some new tactics. And in the end, the match finished 1-0 to Leicester thanks to an Iheanacho penalty. But what tactics did both managers use? Let's take a look. A quick reminder of the formations, as you can see on the OneFootball app, which is today's sponsor. Rodgers went with a fairly strong 4-2-3-1 that looked like this, and City also had a fairly strong 4-3-3 with some youth thrown in there. If you want formations like this for free, in addition to stats, news and transfer stories about your favorite club, all you have to do is download OneFootball absolutely free through the link in the description below. Now, let's start with Leicester in possession. From the goal kick, whenever possible, they look to start short, with Amati and Soyuncu providing options with the fullbacks moving higher and wider. And City were looking to press high up initially, so Schmeichel with the ball at his feet was key. As with Palmer pushing high to support Ferran, he would often be the third man to make it a 3 versus 2. In fact, Schmeichel had the second most touches for Leicester, with 68. By getting on the ball, Schmeichel would draw a presser, and if Gundogan or Fernandinho were backing up the press, there would be more space for Schmeichel to play a chip ball into the midfield. City's press was more effective in open play. They would often be more of a 4-4-2 with Palmer high alongside Ferran. But they pressed alternately, depending on which side the ball was, whilst the other would look to cover a midfielder. And this could be quite effective, as one Leicester pivot would definitely be covered, and the other could also be covered through a combination of the presser's cover shadow and a midfielder moving higher. So Tielemans and Ndidi struggled to get on the ball in these deeper regions early on in the game. They did at times manage to get the ball into the pivots when Schmeichel could find a fullback first, and then the fullbacks could play the ball into the pivots on the right side of the pressure, where they could then advance. And higher up the pitch, Leicester had some brighter moments. This was aided by Ricardo Pereira, who down the right pushed high and wide early on, providing all the width. This would allow Jose Perez to move infield between the lines, causing City headaches, especially when Palmer was high and had left City with only 2 in midfield. It meant that either man could receive a penetrating pass between the lines and then look to play in Barnes or Vardy. Or Maddison could drop deep so that if he was pressed, Perez would have even more space between the lines. But if they looked to cover Perez instead, Maddison would then have time to get his head up and pick out a runner ahead of him. City had some interesting tactics in possession as well. When they had the ball in open play, Leicester could at times use a similar press mechanism, with Maddison looking to join Vardy at times to make a 2. But Maddison primarily looked to stay tight on Fernandinho, as the pivot is the hub of all of Pep's teams, and he was successful with this at times. But with the pivot occupied, City had a way around this. João Cancelo operated as a narrow third centre-back, whilst it was Mendy who would invert into the midfield to be a second option alongside Fernandinho. It should be noted that Mendy didn't always look comfortable inverting, with his positioning and spacing relative to Ake not always being optimal at creating a passing angle and a progressive option. But still, with Mendy and Fernandinho being pivots, Palmer and Gundogan had more space. Palmer primarily pushed high and wide down the right-hand side, but Gundogan was more variable, and most often we saw him move wide to the left early. With both Cancelo and Mendy narrow, Perez and Barnes would be defending narrow, meaning that there were potential 1-versus-1s out wide. But primarily, Perez's narrow position would mean that Gundogan would be free wide left, as the winger would be occupying Pereira. And it would be difficult for Tielemans to press him early, because the presence of Palmer high and wide on the right meant that Ndidi wouldn't be able to easily cover him, and this could potentially leave space for Ferran Torres to drop in from false 9. So instead, this meant that Gundogan would receive in acres of space down the left and drive higher up the pitch, and normally find Edozie, who'd be in a great position for a 1-versus-1 against Pereira, and he did complete a game-high 4 dribbles. And with Pereira dragged out wide to cover, this would create space in the half space, and Mendy from midfield made several dangerous runs to receive there. But we could also see Gundogan move into the half space early on, so that City had a front 5 with the half spaces occupied. But crucially, with the front 4 quite narrow, they were able to pressure the City men on the ball, and Mendy in particular struggled to find progressive passes when under pressure. So City couldn't make the most of the men in the half spaces. But it should be noted that City's build-up shape, particularly when Mendy had advanced, made them vulnerable. If there was a turnover, Fernandinho would be isolated in midfield, and Perez and Maddison could easily outnumber him. In addition, as Cancelo had stayed deep, Barnes could be high up and would be in a great position to transition, making them fairly dangerous. Overall, in this incredibly tight match, the result could have gone either way, but Rodgers would be delighted to back up the FA Cup win with the Community Shield. For City, there will be disappointment, although they obviously were near their first choice 11. But what did you make of the match? Drop it down below. And if you want even more content, whilst helping to support the channel, consider checking out my Patreon at patreon.com/footballmadesimple. You'll get early access to videos, exclusive videos, as well as access to the upcoming FMS video podcast. And a special thanks to my Patreons, including Kalechi Okoronko and Siddharth Krishnan. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.